Alright, so we're going to start learning how to do some drafting. Alright, so drafting is a little different than drawing, some similar tools, but we're going to actually just really focus on if you can draw a straight line, you can draft. So we're going to use a pencil, we're going to use a ruler, but we're really going to use it as something called a T-square. So you should have this little insert that slides on your ruler. If you don't, you can make something. It just needs to be 90 degrees to the surface and have a little bit of a lip here, because what we're going to do is we want to orient this so that our ruler, which is really our T-square, slides up and down this surface, and that keeps us with a 90-degree angle right here. So that's one tool we're going to need, is a way to basically have 90 degrees to a reference side. You're going to need a pencil. I'm going to use two so that you can kind of see the difference in what I'm talking about. And then you're also going to need a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And so these can be 3D printed. They're really simple. And we're going to use this in different orientations to draw our shapes. So to start with, we're just going to create what's called a title block. So I'm going to move this over a little bit so I have a little bit more room. And then you can use, this is grid paper, it helps you kind of make things line up very easily. You can also just use blank white paper. That can be a little bit easier because if your horizontal lines don't match up here, it can throw you off. This, they'll always be true because you're drawing them in. So I'm actually going to use the white paper to start, but you can go back and forth, it doesn't really matter. So what I want to do here is I'm going to basically, at the bottom here, just draw a light line across, and I'm going to draw another light line below it, and then I use that to make my horizontal lines, and then I orient my triangle to make my vertical line. So I'm just going to go over to the edge and make a vertical line, and then I'm going to go to the other side, flip it around if I need to, and just make a vertical line. And so what we've done here is just made a rectangle at the bottom, and I'm just going to partition it somewhere. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to draw a line there, and I'm going to draw a line there, and I'm going to say this is going to be drawn by, and then you can just put your name in the corner. So we're just going to basically reference our sheets, and then in this corner over here, I'm going to say this is sheet 1 of, and I don't know how many yet, but maybe we're going to make more, so we're going to kind of keep track of the order here. All right, we're going to start by making what's called an isometric drawing, and we're going to make a drawing of a cube. So this is a cube, right? There are 6 equal sides. And we're basically trying to get a 3-dimensional view of that. So for our isometric drawing, it's going to look something like that if you looked at it on edge. So we're going to start just by making a vertical line. So it doesn't really matter where we put this. I'm going to have my T-square and then my triangle, and I'm just going to do a very light vertical line. Now I'm going to orient this. I'm going to flip it so that my triangle is going like that. There's my 30-degree angle. And then I can slide this up, move it around, and I'm going to make another 30 degrees. So I've made that looking shape. Looks kind of like a C that's been slanted. I'm going to rotate it around. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. And now I have what looks like a V. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to flip it vertically. So now I have it vertically, and all I'm going to do is do a vertical line there. I'm going to just estimate about the same distance, a vertical line there. And you can see I've got part of my cube. I'm going to flip it back to 30 degrees. I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to lightly draw that in. And then I'm going to flip it one more time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that corner, and I'm going to draw that in. So I've made a cube, a 3-dimensional shape. You can see these lines aren't exactly the same. If I was really worried about it, I could measure them and make sure they're exactly the same. But this is just to get an idea of it. The dimensions in our isometric drawings aren't necessarily as critical as when we get to our flat drawings. We'll see what that is. So if I want to just make sure that that I know that this is the lines that I want to keep, I could outline those in orange. So I see them. The others are just my construction lines. They don't really count. They just help me kind of orient to what I'm looking at. or I could erase them, whatever I want to do. And so what we've done at the end of this is we have created an isometric cube just using our triangle, our T-square, and then our straight edge. So if you need to practice again, you can make more of these, right? You can just make as many as you need to until you get the fundamental idea of this. But being able to create this three-dimensional drawing is really, really important for being able to move forward. So you need to make sure that you can create this isometric cube before you can move forward.